Hi class, Professor Brennan here. Again, part 4 of communicating non-verbally for my interpersonal communication class. We have just finished talking about types of touch, and now we're going to get straight into talking about other ways that we communicate non-verbally, and we're going to talk about appearance. Let's bring that up there. Okay. You're hearing in the background is my little doggy. He's making noise. All right, appearance, how we show up in the world. What do we look like? We're not just talking about the color of our skin or our hair color or our hair length or color of our eyes or how big our nose is. We're talking about like how do we show up the way we adorn ourselves. Okay. Here's an interesting thing that, well, in every culture, what is physically attractive, as well as our own culture, it changes over time. And in terms of like, certainly you can look at women, what was attractive in women in the 50s is different than what's attractive in women now. It's changed. Long hair, short hair, goes in and out, thin, Zoftic, all different kinds of sizes are attractive. Different cultures find certain things attractive, on and on and on. But here's the interesting study is that people who are perceived, right? Whether you like, if you're a man that likes men or a woman that likes women or men and women, opposite sex, they found that people they perceived as physically attractive, that they rated them, just because of their physical attractiveness, they rated them as being more sensitive, kind, stronger, and more interesting, just because they were sexually attractive, or they were physically attracted to them, or they found them physically attractive. Isn't that interesting? Think about that. Again, there's that thing of like when we're talking about the lying, like we're 50% right? Half the time we're right, the other half we're not. How much we transfer our own ideas onto someone of who someone is based upon we find them attractive. It could be like that we hope they have those traits because we find them attractive, or that's what we want to see. It's interesting. Okay. Clothing. So when I talk about appearance, I'm talking about how do you adorn yourself? Your earrings, right? I'm wearing a scarf. I love scarves. You're going to see me now. It's fall. You're going to see me in scarves. I love scarves. What do you wear? What color do you wear? What's your hair length? Do you curl it or not curl it? Is it straight? Do you have kinky hair? Do you wear wigs? Does your hair, like, do you have dreadlocks or do you have like extensions? All these things. Is it short? Do you have nose rings, or do you have like a nose ring here, a nose ring there? Do you have like what I have, an eyebrow piercing? Do you wear makeup? Do you not wear makeup? Right? If you're a guy, do you have sideburns? Do you have a beard? Do you have any facial hair going on? All those things about part of our choices that we make in our appearance, and they communicate to people non-verbally. Again, it's a perception of what we think, which is informed by our own personal likes and dislikes, as well as cultural and social factors that influence. For example, in about 10 years ago, if you saw dudes with a bun on their head, we would be like, okay, where are you from? What are you doing? And now it's kind of normal. Or let's say just 15 years ago or 20 years ago. How about like the whole like hair thing and everything shaved around here? Shaved around here and then the hair goes up. That's another thing. Like that, now we think it's cool. People are doing it. It's kind of becoming normal. Tattoos have become normal. Tattoos used to be associated, that's body adornment, used to be associated with people that were either criminals or people in jail, right? Or bikers. So that's the associations that tattoos had. Tattoos are now have a whole other world, a whole other groups of people. And they're not, in fact, if you don't have a tattoo, that's more the not normal than having a tattoo. So that's what I want to try to say is these things change over historical time of what is communicated and what we see. Keep that in mind when we make these kinds of comments or have these opinions or evaluations about things in the past. Is that point of view was that point of view, and now we have our point of view. But clothing, all these things communicate different messages. And they communicate a certain message. We live in this culture. If we were living in Brazil, how we dress, we'd probably dress differently, probably because of the weather too. If we lived in the Arctic, we dress differently. If we lived in New York, we dress differently. Okay, so there you go. Conveys all kinds of messages. I mean, you could go on and on and on. PROXEMICS. Study of how we use space. I was just talking about that, right? How men sit in a chair versus how women sit in a chair. How we use a physical space. How animals use space. Whether they sit next to each other. I love it when I see my little dog who's sitting here. I'm going to show you a picture. Can you see him? There he is right there. Yeah, you guys can see him. He's wagging his tail. And on the couch is my cat too. So we found a kitty a little over a year ago now, and we already had cats, but they end up being best friends. It's amazing. And how the cats like use space. Some cats allow themselves to be around the other cat, and other cats are like, don't get in my space. And sometimes each cat is in a different room in the house, and there's 4. And we don't have 4 bedrooms. I mean, they're in different rooms of the house. It's interesting. So that's PROXEMICS, a study of how people use space and what it means. Is it about power or not power? Right? When I leave, there's a certain place I sit on the couch all the time. My big husky loves to sit there. Okay, it's also like it's in the couch, it's this corner of the couch. So you can, when you sit there, you can see this way and that way. So it is a place of like, in terms of defense, not that I'm defended, but it's a good place to see this way and that way because I'm in the corner of this couch. But my husky likes to sit there, and immediately when I get up, the little dog will get in my seat too. Now, is he seeking warmth or is he seeking to have power? Interesting. I'm talking about animals right now, but think about in your interpersonal relationships, about space, how you use it. Space also communicates how you feel about that person, right? And how in certain cultures, space is like certain cultures where there's a lot of people, and how they use space is different, right? It's different in, I want to think of like cultures like Hong Kong, like lots of people are crowded, even like New York too, in places that are crowded, and how people use space and how people get used to people like brushing up against you and not even noticing them, right? Versus people that might live in like Montana, where there's a lot of space, and you might feel that you're being encroached upon if they're, less than, if the next house is less than a mile away. I'm just making this up, but for example, again, it's about your perception. It can be about power. Choosing the distances upon which choosing the distances based upon the receiver of your message. So that's about relationships. In fact, we're going to look at that in a minute. We're going to look at Edward T. Hall's 4 spatial zones, and you're going to laugh a little because you're going to see this relationship of what we're going to right now about the 6 feet distance thing with COVID, right? It's interesting because here we are, and hang on one second, I'll be right back. So here we are with needing to have distance from each other, and Edward T. Hall, we're talking about like early 19th century, he was born. This is like from a long time in the early, not 19th century, 20th century, probably in the mid 1950s or something like that. I don't remember when exactly, but this is a long time ago, in which probably actually not quite 100 years ago, let's say 75 years ago, when this guy came up with this theory, this man, this scholar, I think he was an anthropologist, came up with this theory that people choose distances between each other based upon how well they know each other, okay, or what kind of feeling they have about. So let's take a look at that graph right now. So he said, and this is where you get that 6 feet, right? An intimate distance between two people that are intimately involved, that space right there, it's only about 18 inches. So 18 inches is like a foot and a half, right? That anyone from 0 to 18 that's intimate. Now, when you get past that, so we're just going to get a measure. I'm going to get a measure. Hang on. Okay, so here we have the measure. Here's one. It's a lot bigger than that. So that's 18 inches right there. That's pretty big, huh? Can you guys see it? 18 inches. So anything beyond 18 inches to 4 feet is what we call personal distance. Now I have 4 feet's a lot. So that's 18. Think about how much. So that's 18 is a foot and a half, 4 feet personal distance. So how you might talk to someone that you're personally involved with on a personal level, okay? How students talk with teachers, we're involved on a personal level in terms of space. Now, what's interesting, I have a little story, is for me as a teacher, sometimes I'll literally have, it's usually gentlemen, but not always. A young man will stand about 4 feet away from me talking to me, and you know what? I am not 30 years old. So if they don't talk loud, I'm like, I'm sorry, I can't hear you. And I take a step toward him, and he takes a step back. It's hilarious. And I go, okay. I'm like, you need to speak up then. And it always cracks me up, but it has to do with how much willingness, how intimate we feel toward that person, right? Or if we're afraid of that person, or the comfortable, that space gives us a level of comfort, whatever that space is, okay? And then the opposite is, in certain cultures, the use of space is different. Now, Edward T. Hall is an American guy, and he studied the habits of Westerners. If oftentimes, or not oftentimes, but sometimes I'll have a student that's not from this culture and not from a Western culture, from a different country. And that student will stand close to me. Like, it'll be a male student who stand close to me, and I have no problem with that. That doesn't bother me at all. It doesn't bother me at all. But I think it's interesting because I might interpret that from my culture that student feels comfortable with me. That student might just be like, this is how we talk to people. There's no like space thing. It's the rules, this applies to like Western thinking Westerners, but not necessarily to Easterners, okay, for example. Okay, and then the other thing I want to say is usually women, we talked about women standing closer together. I know when students, especially female students, when they stand close to me, how comfortable they feel with me, right? And that is true about a lot of like where they stand. If I'm sitting at my desk, because usually I'm in a classroom and sit at my desk, and how they come up to me and where they stand tells me their level of comfort with me. If they stand farther away, they're less comfortable with me. They feel like they don't know me as well. But the students that feel like they know me get right in my intimate space. Like definitely in that personal distance. They're not 4 feet away. They're more like 18 inches away. So that's all I want to say. Think about that the next time you're, in an elevator, or why we feel uncomfortable in a crowded elevator, right? Because all those violations of personal space are going on. And think about how it is when you're standing in the grocery store line. I know for me, I've literally told someone you need to back up because I don't like it. I want that 4 feet. Now we have to have 6 feet. But before COVID, right? It's interesting. Check that out. See what happens. Play with this whole space thing with others without them even knowing it, and see what happens. See how people react. Do they come closer? Do they go farther away? It's kind of a fun, interesting thing. That's it for me. That's nonverbal communication, interpersonal communication. You're a great class. I will see you later. Take it easy.